Welcome everyone. Must be slow getting through that door there. Everybody's, yep, coming in. Good little crowd. Just get everybody in here and everybody settled, and then we will get started. Welcome everyone. Just a couple more minutes and then we're gonna get started. Welcome, welcome. All right, welcome everybody. We're just, I'm gonna get started. We're gonna do our introduction so we have everybody on the same page, and people will have everybody jump in, and as they're coming in, they can hear all about us. So good afternoon and welcome to the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center with Clark University webinar series. This is the ABCs of Returning Safely to Work. It is a 3-episode webinar series, and it is presented to you today by safety trainers and MassMEP. Obviously, today is day 2. We did an episode yesterday, and I can let everybody know how you can get caught up on that at the end of my little spiel here. I'm Haley Steele. I'm the marketing coordinator with MassMEP, and I'll be your moderator for the webinar. We also have behind the scenes our marketing director, Christy Grignon, and our information technology manager, or as we like to say, IT manager, Matt Healy, and they are both behind the scenes keeping things rolling around long for us this afternoon. Our panelist today is Darcy Cook. She is the owner of Cook Professional Resources, or as we like to call them, safety trainers. So she will be your panelist. And we also have with us Cheryl Miller, who is the Senior Business Advisor and Training Director with the MaSBDC. It's Central area, right, Cheryl?
Right, Central Massachusetts.
Central Mass.
Work with everybody.
There you go. So, and they're with out of Clark University. So, but thank you all for joining us. As you can see, your mics are muted, but you will be able to engage with us this afternoon through a couple of different ways. We have polls, we have the chat, and we have the Q&A. If any of you are new to using Zoom, down on the bottom of your screen underneath the picture of either probably myself speaking right now and then the presentation that Darcy will be presenting, there is a little chat bubble and a little Q&A bubble. We like to say to use the chat bubble to kind of, if you have some things that pop up and you want to talk amongst yourselves, use that chat bubble and bring things up. Or if you have something specific that you want to target to one of the panelists, we ask that you use that button. For the Q&A though, we ask if you have a question that you think somebody else may benefit from as well, that is in the audience with you this afternoon, and it may be something that we may learn too on our side with MassMEP. Please jump in and throw that in the Q&A. And those are both down on the bottom. At the end of the content, we will go through the Q&A, the questions that you've typed into the box. So like I said, as you're going along, make sure you just pop them in there. We have a couple of polls throughout the webinar today, and those will pop up at different times. So when you see them on your screen, just go ahead and give them an answer. The reason we put the polls up is it does give Darcy a target and knowing who the audience that is that she's working with today and that she's speaking to. It gives her a little insight onto each of you and where you kind of stand or where you are along the process lines right now in regards to these webinars and the content that's involved with them. So please answer those. It does give us a little bit of feedback, which really is very helpful. So we do have an hour set aside for the webinar. We feel it's plenty of time for the content. And to be respectful of your time, if there are any questions left that we haven't answered by the end of the webinar, we will send a response directly to the email address that you registered with in response with your question. And I'm gonna be honest, Darcy is quick and she's fast, and she will keep you moving You will definitely be awake for this webinar, and at the end of it, you might even have a lot more energy than you started with. So be prepared. You'll probably at times, she's going to have some great information that's going to pop up on the screen. You're going to want to do some screenshots. So get those fingers ready on your keyboards for doing some screenshots this afternoon. And upon completion of our series, we actually make the videos. They will be available through a private link. We understand that everyone is anxious and they want to receive this information while it's still fresh, but we do ask for you to be patient with us, as it does take time to edit and produce the videos for your viewing quality. But the link will also be emailed to the email address that you provided upon registration. So I'm going to give the floor to Cheryl. She's going to talk a little bit about the SBDC, and then she'll be turning it right over to Darcy to get started. All right, Cheryl, it's all yours.
Well, good afternoon. We're really excited about this seminar. So the Small Business Development Centers, we're part of a national organization. We're primarily funded by the SBA as well as each state. So we provide free and confidential business advisory services as well as webinars and seminars. And as long as you're a for-profit business, we can work with you for free. So we are located at Clark University, but there are other centers throughout the state and in every single state in the country, including even Guam, Hawaii. We're there to go and help you across the country. So thanks for joining this webinar, and be prepared to take some notes.
Okay, it's my turn. I'm up. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time today, thank you for being here. As a reminder, here's what you're going to be doing throughout this presentation. I'm not deep diving really into any one topic, but I'm going to give you guys enough to get you going in the right direction. Your job is to take a pulse check of where you are in writing your control plan. Are you a 1? You haven't even started yet. A 3, we've got some stuff on paper. We want to hear what you have to say, Darcy. We want to see that we're on track and figure out what our next things are that we need to do. And then a 5 is we're rock solid. We're glad we came to this webinar. We can check this box and we can move forward. So I do move at a quick little pace for those, again, who are just joining us. We will use all of our time, and feel free to communicate with the team that's here. So thanks, everyone. Let's get going. I want to jump right to this. I'm going to start off by giving you guys this link. You'll have it. So OSHA, who basically governs and protects your employees, and you guys who are on here, unless you own the company, you're an employee too. So OSHA's here to protect you, and they write a book this thick with a whole bunch of federal laws that tell your owner of your company what they're supposed to be doing to keep you safe. Then we have the CDC. Today, we're going to be using them as best practices because we're talking about COVID-19. We're in a pandemic. We're talking about this invisible germ that sent us all home and shut down everything that we love in this world. And now we're all trying to re-enter the workforce. And the CDC, although they're not laws, they are making recommendations that basically our governors are taking hold of to implement and create change in the workforce so we can safely and be healthy in operating. What I love is CDC and OSHA really just started to communicate, which is great, right? When two big regulation organizations start talking, it makes it easier on you and I. They actually got together and they started to write some things. So this link kind of takes the best practices with OSHA's federal law, and you've got these two editors, writers, producers of these documents starting to talk. This is a good place for you guys, especially in Massachusetts, to take a look at what they're having to say. This is what you need to become an expert in. It's getting familiar on how you're making these choices and decisions. You're being asked right now to make a lot of changes in your business, and the regulators, the people who are going to cite you and fine you, where you're going to find yourself in trouble under COVID-19 issues, they are expecting you to use this graft. This actually comes from OSHA, and it's the way that you make choices and decisions in your business so that we keep keep everyone social distanced. It's so that we decrease the contact, how frequently we touch the same surfaces. This is the order of which you are going to make those decisions. Please note that PPE, putting a mask on your face and coming to work, is at the very, very bottom. You need to observe as employees and follow and implement all these other changes. It's not about just wearing the mask. So 4 categories the state of Massachusetts has kind of taken this whole pandemic and sectioned it up into 4 parts: social distancing, hygiene protocols, cleaning and disinfecting, and staffing and operations. Today, we are going to spend our entire hour in staffing and operations. We touch a little bit on the disinfecting. We touch a little bit on the social distancing. We touch a little bit on the disinfecting. But this is where we talk about all of your engineering controls, your warning signs, and your administrative controls. Today, we're in the green, yellow, and orange zones of your decision-making process. And so please take a minute to fill out the poll question that's up here, because right away, as I go through this, wherever we have the most people, I'm going to make sure that I use a lot more examples in the categories that you guys need the most help in. So click this poll question so that I know where I need to give you examples. Okay, social distancing. I'm going to give you a bulleted list moving forward for the next hour in each of these categories. It's going to be bulleted list, bulleted list, bulleted list. So, okay, disinfecting. No, for all of you who said disinfecting and staffing and operations, the good news is that's where you want the most help. Today, it's all about staffing and operations. Tomorrow, it's all about disinfecting. So you're in the right place. Perfect. Okay. So under the social distancing and using that upside down triangle, these 5 little bullet points here are what you're sitting in a boardroom or sitting over Zoom with your coworkers, basically talking about, hey, where are the major parts of our business and major functionality of our organization? And then you got to say, you know, which ones can we scale up and scale down? Which people can we send at home? Which ones can stay? Can we create split shifts or flexible scheduling? Some come in early, some come in late. The last thing we want to see are people bunched up at a time clock. The last thing we want to see is a whole bunch of people walking through the door at the exact same time. We don't want to see you guys in groups. We want to see you spread out and kind of like sprinkles on your ice cream. You got to be spread out all at a different time. Your key employees, do you guys right now, I don't know of those listening, how many of you had to shut your doors and go home? If you were that person who had to shut your door and go home, you were probably thinking, wow, business continuity. I just had to close my business. How is it that I can function in a pandemic, get my doors open, generating an income, right? And then for those of you who are essential workers and you guys stayed open, you are probably like, who are my most important people in my business? Because if they get COVID-19 and they don't show up for the next 2 weeks or month longer, how am I going to operate my own business? Did you cross-train? As the owner of the company, do you know everyone's jobs? Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm the owner of my company and I don't know everyone's jobs because I hire people that are smarter than me. And if I can do their job, then why am I hiring them? So I'm at high risk when we look at a pandemic in terms of, have I taken other employees and cross-trained them to be able to do each and every single person's jobs? And then in the staffing model of social distancing, you guys want to make sure that you are looking at and segmenting out. I like to think of like it maybe as departments and then what happens within those departments. Go to your front lobby space, go to your shipping and receiving department, go to your office administration section, go to your kitchen if you're in a retail, go to the spa if you're in a spa, go watch where you do hair, drying or where you do hair washing. Go walk around your company and kind of like map it out into sections and chunks, which you might not, if you're not in the manufacturing world, you might have not have thought of like, oh, I have front end operations, I have restaurant delivery. Like you probably didn't section everyone out in job classifications. The best thing to do is go to your HR department, ask your HR department how many different job classifications you have for your company, and then maybe you look at your company through job classifications. That's a good way to kind of break it down, because if you guys try to look at the whole company and make all these applications to the whole company without sectioning it off, it becomes overwhelming. And if you don't have the experience or the resources, you can miss stuff and along the way. So here's your bullet point list. All of you should be able to go down this list and tell me what you have done in each of these bullet point areas. Now, if you didn't make a change in one of these areas, so be it. You didn't make a change. You don't have to change and fix every one of these bullet points, but we want to see you do at least half of them. Remember, you guys have to make a good faith effort. You've got to show me, if I'm a regulator coming through your door, what you've done to comply, what you've done to decrease the chance of your employees and your visitors and patrons and guests contracting COVID-19 in your facility. So this social distancing list is literally for you guys to go, contact list deliveries. Well, how does my mail get picked up? Do I hand it to my post office guy or girl that they come in? Does the UPS and FedEx drop off? Do they come in my building? They drop outside the building? You literally want to ask yourself and go through this bullet list and be like, I'm doing good here. Are you a 1, 3, or 5? On the social distancing, this slide, basically, I want you to know is that we have had an update, a change. So for in your administrative sections, or if you are in the salon business, or if you're in the restaurant business, your expectation is that you're separating out spaces so that we're 6 feet apart. And when you can't separate us out 6 feet apart, what are you doing to create a partition or a separation? Now, I would have loved the state of Massachusetts to write this statement with a comma and then the word if feasible, meaning some of the requests that they're asking for in your business might cause a greater hazard or risk to your employees. So, for example, in the kitchen, we are going to be shoulder to shoulder in a restaurant and probably not 6 feet apart. We can't put up partitions in the kitchen. We can't hang shower curtains as dividers in the kitchen. Something's going to catch on fire, okay? It's also against the fire code. It's also going to impact evacuation and exit routes. So what really needs to happen after these, if we're going to look at what Massachusetts is asking us and also take into consideration FDA, EPA, OSHA, MSHA, all the other regulators, which are federal laws, you guys want to take a look at it and say, comma, if feasible. So always look at this. If what you're doing is going to create a bigger or greater hazard, I get this question asked when we have people in masks who are in areas where there's no air conditioning, it gets very hot, and they're working with other equipment that where the mask might pose a health hazard, meaning it's too hot. We're going to worry about people fainting and passing out or the inability to breathe really well because they're wearing a mask. So it would be infeasible at that moment in time. It doesn't mean that everyone in that department gets to go without masks or gets to be within 6 feet of each other. But what we have to say is, okay, if they can't wear a mask, what can we move to? And that's where we talk about using a face shield. It's also where we now have a definition on contact tracing. So you guys now know that if you and I are together less than 6 feet, for greater than 15 minutes. 15 minutes is the number that state of Massachusetts has published. If we're hanging out greater than 15 minutes and I test positive for COVID-19, now you must go quarantine. But if you and I together in the same space and it's less than 15 minutes, or if you and I are in the same space and we're 6 feet or greater apart, you don't have to go quarantine. So it's really understanding all of these definitions, and maybe some of you need to ask a few more questions if you get stuck or stumped. So remember, if it's feasible, do you create a bigger hazard or risk to your employees? And if you do, then we have to go back to this. It doesn't mean we don't do something. It means we have to go back to purple and ask ourselves all the questions and all the possibilities of what we can do to keep our employees safe when we're being asked by the state to make some of these changes in our company and our business. Okay. So under hygiene protocols, next category. Remember, we're going to spend time in staffing and operations. That's where I want to get to. Under the hygiene protocols, this is the bullet list of changes that you guys need to be thinking. Number one, all of you should have hand sanitizer stations. But hand sanitizer stations do not replace hand washing. And if your bathroom facilities are outside your suite, if you're in a building and your employees have to leave your space to go to the bathroom, is there a kitchen where employees can be washing their hands in your space? Because hand sanitizers should not be replacing hand washing. And I shared with you yesterday, hand sanitizers are what? Flammable. So there are situations and circumstances where you should be washing your hands and not using hand sanitizer. So number one, engineering controls. Do we have these hand sanitizer stations up? Do you have them marked with signage so I can find them? If you guys are going into the bathrooms under the hygiene protocol, is it automatic toilet flushing? Is there automatic water dispensing? Is there automatic paper towel dispensing? If those things are all in place, awesome. Like that would be the ultimate goal. But if you don't, let's back down. How about if you have a toilet seat cover? Can you guys take the toilet seat cover off the toilet so you and I don't have to keep touching the toilet seat cover? That would be great. How about if you've got disposable paper towels in a basket, right? I don't have to touch anything to get it. I can just pull that top one off. I can shut off the faucet. I can actually open up the door if the bathroom doors aren't automatic, which most of them are not. And then I open it up and I throw it in the trash and out I go. Which is great is if doors open up wide, this is where you do the hip check and the shoulder check and the bump, right? We don't have to use our hands because it's our hands touching our face that gives us the risk of catching COVID-19. So anything that you can do in the hygiene world to go to automated systems and processes, that's going to be really good for you. On the administrative side, remember, these are your rules. So what are we going to put for rules in place? Well, if as soon as anyone comes in my building, employee or not, you've got to either wash your hands or you got to use hand sanitizer. I don't know what you were doing in the car, putting lipstick on. I have no idea what you were doing in the car before you came into my building. So you've got to disinfect your hands upon entry. You got to make sure that you guys have the rules around how to hand wash.
Hey, Darcy.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Christy. You moved your microphone when you got excited with the hand wash.
Okay. Get me going. Thanks, Christy. So you guys need to make sure you have that stuff in place. The other thing too is you get to make these rules. And listen, we can't make the assumption, because I've seen everybody, and so haven't you. People go to the bathroom and they don't wash their hands. People open up their lunch after being at work and they don't wash their hands. They just start eating. You actually have to put rules in place where you're telling your employees what the expectation is around when you want them to wash their hands. In the policies I write, it basically says before and after meals, upon entering the building, before and after you take a smoke break, you wash your hands. You don't use hand sanitizer. If you cough or sneeze, you go wash your hands. If you pet any animals. So remember, your company might not have animals, but there are other companies out there where they bring service dogs in, or owners of companies like their dogs and they come to work, and you as the employee have dogs there. So we got to put into the plan, if you're touching the pets, even a goldfish, I've seen that, people petting goldfishes, you got to wash your hands. If they're going to put lipstick, chapstick on, you got to literally spell out the expectation. If your employees are not washing their hands 8 to 12 times a day, then they're doing something wrong. So that's what you guys want to be thinking about under hygiene protocols. Let's get to this one. This is the meat and potatoes, as my grandmother would call it. This is the staffing and operations. These are the changes that we're making within our building related to the impact of our employees. So let's start off on the whole return to work kind of idea, or the screening process that we need to be responsible for. So you guys do know at this point, you must have a screening process every day, which might include self-monitoring and self-assessment, but there are other questions, especially with the new travel ban, that you have to be asking of your employees. Now, I'm not saying someone should stand at the door and ask every single employee before they come in the room. I think I made the suggestion yesterday that you guys put the poster up. You list out all the questions, which are pre-screening questions for anyone entering your building. If they say yes to any of them, they go home. If they say no, they can come into the building. So temperature checking is an engineering control. It is part of the screening process. You are not required to do temperature checking. If you are going to do temperature checking, please look up the recommendations and understand that if you have not hired a third party to do this, and if you're asking employees to do it of other employees, that you are putting your employees at risk. You're asking me to take everyone's temperature and record that in the morning as the supervisor. Well, guess what? That means I'm on the front line, potentially being exposed to anyone today whose temperature is 100.2, 100.4, 100.5. If I'm going to be the frontline defense and you're going to put me in that situation, you've got to add additional protection, right? The gowns, the face masks. I'm definitely less than 6 feet. Special gloves. You got to make sure that I know how to take all that off. You got to make sure that I know how to clean it. If you are asking each employee to take their own temperature, we can't pass the thermometer down the line. Someone's got to wipe that thing down between every single person. So have you trained your employees in that, and are they doing it and following it? Because one temperature gauge passed down the line, if I'm positive and nobody cleans it, that means everybody potentially in that line who now touched it, who goes like this with their face, is also going to end up at home on a 14-day quarantine. Okay. This thing on an exposure control plan, I will talk to you guys more about this. It seems like a lot of you don't have an exposure control plan in place. Okay, don't panic. But it's a really simple form that kind of helps you with this whole pandemic, kind of get you up to speed and keep you guys in the safe space. So we'll thank you for this poll. This makes it very helpful for me to talk about some things as we go. On the engineering control side, I have up here called pre-qualifying questions. Remember yesterday? Are you going to start pre-qualifying your vendors, not pre-screening them, pre-qualifying them? Do you even want to hire them? Are they posing a risk when they come in your building? What are you expecting of them? You got to push back. In a pandemic, you got to push back. Okay, why, Darcy? I just like Darcy. I want her to come work for me. I trust her. You can't just like and trust me anymore. Because in this pandemic situation, I will tell you, of the states that have started to fine companies, they find companies who let other people in their building and those people did not follow the control plans. They did not follow social distancing. They did not wear masks. They did not use the right hand washing. And other employees freaked out and made phone calls. And when they did the investigation, they found out that you, the owners of the company, did not hold those vendors accountable. And so therefore, you as the owner of the company who hired that company and didn't hold them accountable, you got fined, you got cited. So we don't want to be in that situation, those circumstances. So think about pre-qualifying your vendors. I tell my clients, create an email that's templated. And if anyone's coming onto your property, it's got to be a scheduled appointment and you send them that email in advance. You pre-qualify them, you pre-screen them, and you make sure that they're going to be safe on your property and not expose your employees. That would stink if someone came in and got your people sick with COVID-19 and you had to shut down your business. What would that do for you? That would not be good for PR. That would not be good for your employee relationships. That would not be good for your bank account. So we don't want to go that route. Can you do telehomework, telecommuting? Have you used technologies? Who can stay home? Do they have to be at work? Can you shift and change your business model? That's what they're asking to do on the engineering controls. Even though Cheryl's in the room next door, we still intercom, talk to each other back and forth. We try to minimize how much we're going in and out of each other's spaces. On the rules side of things, do you guys have a rock solid sick policy? And if you are not an HR person and you don't have an HR relationship right now, and you're like, I don't even know how to write one of these things, I don't have a handbook, then just take a piece of paper and write down what the CDC says that you have to do and tell your employees that that's what you're going to follow. If you guys come in contact with anyone, I'm sending you home for 14 days. If you guys get sick, in order for you to come back to work, you have to be fever-free for 24 hours and or you need a doctor's note and or you need a negative test and or you need to make sure that you've gone at least 14 days with no symptoms before I let you come back. Just create a sick policy that's just citing the CDC guidelines. Now, if you have an HR partner and you have a handbook, it's time to call them. get your handbook up to date and get all your employees to sign off on all the additions and changes you've made to your handbook. And of course, we always like to recommend also, so you got Small Business Association, a Small Business Development Center who's sponsoring this event. If you are a small business and you don't have these basic fundamental things in place, contact them, get some consulting. 20 years ago, I started at the Small Business Development Center because I didn't know how to do any of this. I had an idea and I just ran with my idea. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know what it meant to be a real business with safety and health and regulations. And that's what I also think turned into a regulatory company. So reach out to them. Flexible schedules, we just talked about that. Make those rules up about who can come in and when they can be here. Okay, next thing about your employee and operations. Contactless delivery and pickup. So are you guys having supplies besides the UPS and the FedEx guys? We've already talked about them. Do you guys have a box truck? Do you guys have a UPS, a 18-wheeler? Do you have raw materials being delivered? Do you have the white van delivery of a specific vendor who comes and sees you? Are you letting in the building? Are you not letting in the building? Can they use the bathroom? Can't they? We've kind of talked about these. You've got to have a policy in place for people who are coming in and out of your building, no matter what it is that they're doing. Paperless documentation. I would tell you, we had a podcast yesterday with MassMEP. And we were talking about what's the future hold. In my future, we're not all wearing masks, but I can tell you what my future holds. If you're talking about safety and health in the future, what companies need to do, they need to change their operating process, the parts that we're talking about right now. We need to decrease how much we touch something, how often we share, can we automate? That's where we need to go when we're talking about an infectious control plan. And as a reminder, this control plan, I will cross my heart, I swear, based on what I've seen and what I know that's already sitting in legislature, I would put money down that our control plans are going to turn into infectious control plans. These plans are not going to go away. The title is just going to change. It's not going to just be about COVID-19. It's going to be about cold season and flu season. It's going to be about whatever else comes up, blood or other potentially infectious materials. So contactless is where we need to go. Paperless, payments, accounts payable, receivable. Are you guys still writing out checks? Time to go to the ACH world, pay online. Are you handing checks to your employees? Time to get rid of the paper checks. Got to move out of those systems. Invoicing, ordering, all that stuff needs to move into an electronic system. The flow and process of how you are moving product around, we want to decrease sharing. So what you need to do under the engineering control is walk around your building and say, where do we share? Because we got to eliminate sharing. Where do we share? We got to eliminate sharing. Can we eliminate sharing? Is it feasible to eliminate sharing? Is it costly? Is it cost effective? Do we have to put that on the capital budget for the future and plan on how to move something to an automated system or whatever it's going to be, or buy another set of something? Because no sharing is really going to be the rule on the rule side of what we're looking to do. The travel piece, I've been setting out posts. We've been putting things. MEP's got a newsletter that's coming out talking about the new travel ban. To look it up, how that's going to impact you. You guys have to have rules about travel. You guys have employees who are going to want to go on vacation right now. So get together with your HR team. Decide, what does that look like when I come back from Florida? What does that look like when I come back from Texas? What does it look like when I come back from California? If you are coming from outside of New England, what's the plan? What is that going to look like? If I'm doing interstate travel and I'm in New England, you're okay. But what happens if I cross those lines and I'm now outside of New England? You guys have got to rewrite your control plans and make those updates. If you're going to do any kind of meetings, some of you have started at meetings in your conference rooms. It's the whole musical chairs. Get rid of the extra chairs. Don't line them on the outside of the walls. Put only 6 chairs in. Put a maximum occupancy sign on all common areas, and then make rules. Take the candy dish out. We don't have a container of pens where everyone's taking a pen and putting a pen back. You show up a meeting with your own pen. You leave with your own pen. We're not going to eat. If you are going to eat, you got to be 6 feet apart, and you guys got to do Panera box lunches. We're not sharing pizzas. I mean, things are supposed to be pre-packaged. We need to really scale back. I go in and there are refrigerators in conference rooms for vendors and guests, handing them bottles of water, having some water, chit-chatting together. Those days are over right now in the pandemic. You want to scale all that stuff back. And you might even want to limit how long people are in meetings, in spaces, especially if they're not maintaining that 6 feet. And if they are maintaining that 6 feet and you're letting them take the masks off and they're sharing stuff, again, when it comes down to contact tracing, you're going to find yourself with a longer list. The goal is to have a short list if we should have an issue in our building, not a long one. Okay, so more engineering controls, things that you guys need to be thinking about. We talked about how the partitions need to be 6 feet now. That's a new, change about if you can't be 6 feet apart, we got to keep a way to separate us. So think about all your administrative office kind of workers. They're all putting plexiglass up. They're separating. They're putting distances and spaces, all kinds of changes. You guys go into the grocery store. You're going to the Lowe's, the Home Depot. You're going to retail stores. I pull up at the fast food restaurants. I mean, like everyone's got plexiglass everywhere. It's called the sneeze guard. The plexiglass people are making a fortune, and now they call it the sneeze guard. But that's an engineering control. It's a separation. I will tell you a shower curtain also works. Hanging shower curtains. I got companies that are hanging shower curtains. Low cost, easy to put up. For them, not a fire hazard, not obstructing exits and exitways, and everyone's happy with shower curtains. You guys, doors. Controlling the flow of traffic. Let's stop meeting face to face. If you have the ability to change the flow of operations, you should be changing the flow of operations. When you can't change the flow of operations, then you should put some rules in place. Hey, let the guy go by, then you go by. Just step out of the way. The whole coughing and sneeze etiquette, turn away, put your elbow into the shoulder. Don't cough and sneeze in the person's face coming right at you down the hallway or in a space. If there are 2 doors, like to your cafeteria or your common spaces, 1 door is an entrance, 1 door is an exit. Flow of traffic, everyone moving in the same direction, decreasing the risk of 6 feet, decreasing face-to-face contact. I don't know how many of you need to think about what's going on in your parking lots, but as soon as your employees open the door and put their foot in your parking lot or in a place that you tell them to park, they now become you, and safety becomes an issue once the employee gets out. So what's happening in your parking lot spaces? If I pull in this way and you pull in this way and our doors open up face to face and we both get out and we're standing in between the cars like this, that's not social distancing. So do you have to designate every other parking spot? Do you have to tell everyone to back in? I have manufacturing companies who are telling all their employees they all have to back in, period. That's the expectation in the parking lot. That's how we cut back. When shift changes happen and we have a lot of people in and out of the parking lots, we don't want them accidentally bumping into each other. So how do we control that? We make a rule and we tell everyone they have to park in the same direction. This is about seat limitations, lobby, candy dish. What do you guys have in your appliances right now, in your conference rooms, in your kitchens, in your vending machines? Do you want the vending machines being used? Are you having the guy come in once a week? Are you having the guy come in 3 times a week? Can we cut it back to 1 time a week? Are people going to bring in their own snacks? What are we going to do around the food? If everyone's allowed to bring in their own lunch pails, what kind of containers do those need to be in? How are we sharing those in the refrigerator? Someone better not bring an apple and stick it in the refrigerator, just sitting on the shelf in the refrigerator. That's a no-no right now. Everything's going to be contained and packaged in relation. So all of you are small businesses who are sharing a refrigerator and people are bringing their lunch and you're making your lunches in the kitchen. You guys have got to rethink those processes. Not that you can't do it. You just got to put some rules in place to keep everyone safe. What's your airflow? Easiest thing to do if you don't have any control about the air exchange in your building or facility, or if you don't know about it and you haven't called your HVAC person, or they're so busy they can't get to you right now, here's the deal. Open doors and windows, comma, if it's safe to do so. So if it doesn't impact the product or service that you're doing, if it doesn't pose a security risk, airflow, right? COVID-19, I cough and sneeze. If we've got good airflow and everything's exchanging air and moving out or getting pushed down, it decreases the chance of you getting it from me, right? So that's a big deal. On the rule side of things, again, visitors and customers, are you requiring them to wear a mask? Now, if it was my sandbox, I just want you to know that in my sandbox, if you are just coming in for an hour, a minute, 10 minutes, you're only going to be there a week, and you are not a full-time, long-time employee of me, guess what you have to do the whole time you're in there? Wear a mask. Because you're disruptive. And if you come into my building and you aren't following the rules and I can't keep my eyes on you and you're in my building and I see you without a mask, you're posing a risk. If I'm with you, if I've got my eyes on you the whole time, I know where you're going, I know who you're coming in contact with, I'm observing your hygiene behaviors, I'm observing what you're doing, and we're sitting still, then I might let you take your mask off, right? That could be a rule. But if you've got people moving around in your building who are unsupervised and you don't have eyes on them and your staff doesn't have eyes on them, guess what? Everyone wears a mask. Ask me why. Because I've already had 3 companies with 3 major problems of third parties coming in and the guys taking off their masks and they were coughing and sneezing and other employees were freaking out, running to the owner of the company because these guys, a third party who came in to do work, weren't wearing masks. They were walking around without masks and they were coughing and sneezing. One guy was in the bathroom with them and he had a meltdown. I thought they were going to get into a fist fight because of this guy who's not an employee. So you guys have got to really lay this stuff out. I could start telling you about all the stories that are happening. Just know that we're putting these things in bullet point and telling you to think about them because things are happening as we're March, April, May, June, July. We're 5 months into this now. And then I think we talked about all the rest of those. Okay, moving on. More things you guys need to think about. Do you guys have eye wash stations? So if you're having employees use chemicals and you read the safety data sheet, and the safety data sheet talks about eye washing and flushing and risk to the eyes, especially if you're using anything that's a spray or an aerosol versus a wipe or a gel, you need to have an eye wash station. That doesn't mean you have to have it plumbed in. It means go buy the 2 bottles of eye wash that sit in the red or the green container that say eye wash and put it in your office. So if those of you who are in the office world who have never had to deal with eye wash stations, but now you're having all your employees cleaning using chemicals, i.e. bleach, a lot of you are using, bleach gets in your eyes, we have a bad day. You have to have an eye wash station so I can start flushing the bleach out of your eyes, of course, while we've called an ambulance, and you've got to have these safety data sheets on hand. So if you guys are choosing harsher chemicals, you're buying things because you can't get a supplier, you're buying things overseas, you're sending some pretty toxic, crazy stuff over, you better read those safety data sheets, because if it says that you need to have a shower now, a pull shower station, because if I get it on my skin, I need to be dunked in a shower, you need to know what that paperwork says. You guys think that these bleach wipes are safe. There's rules around these bleach wipes. At home, there's no regulators. At home, there's no OSHA. At home, there's no public health. At home, you can do whatever you want with it, just like your mother and your grandmother taught you. But if you bring these into the workplace, what you do at home cannot be the same thing as what you do here in this company. And so you have to understand the rules. Safety data sheets tell us the rules. You guys say, hey, Darcy, I'm using this chemical. I'm going to say, give me the safety data sheet. I read it. It tells me everything, how we store it, what personal protective equipment we need to put on our employees, how we can use it, how we can't use it, what happens if it gets on the skin, eyes, what happens if we drink it and breathe it. It tells me everything I need to know on that sheet of paper. And then you got to put a plan around that. AEDs is a great engineering control right now in the event that someone does collapse in your building. Instead of doing CPR, let's get an AED on them quickly. Instead of doing traditional CPR, let's do hands-only CPR. And we talked about it a little bit yesterday. You guys have got to step up your resources in your first aid kits. Do you have a first aid room right now? Remember we said, hey, isolation room. So let's create an isolation room. Do we have signs that can go on that isolation room when I'm in it and I'm sick and I can't leave your building? Do we have signs ready to go to stick on that door when I finally get out of the building and now someone has to clean it? Because you don't want someone going into that room unless it's been cleaned before you start to use it again, because we don't want to have a pandemic in your building. So maybe you guys need to think about, I know you need to think about, you need to figure out what you're going to do with me and where I'm going to go if I'm showing COVID-related signs and symptoms, right? not for everything, just COVID-related signs and symptoms. So the administrative side of things, if you guys have an eye wash station and you have a shower station, you need to know the rules. Though you're required to do inspections on a regular basis with those. So now you have to assume on and take that responsibility. Your first aid kits, there's a monthly requirement to check your AED and your first aid kits. You need to know that. So that's got to be taken on by someone in terms of responsibility. And then of course in your sick policy, I want to see you guys have written down, what are you going to do specifically? What are the steps? Because if you're not there, I got to follow the rules. So what are the steps if someone does get sick and they can't leave the building? And then last but not least, in the rules under your operations, what does your emergency cleaning look like? Emergency cleaning, by the way, is after someone is tested positive, not Darcy, who just has symptoms. Now, I'm not saying that you guys can't step up your game, and if I'm showing symptoms, you could do an emergency cleaning and wait to see if I'm positive. But the rules right now say you don't have to do an emergency cleaning until after I've tested positive. Darcy, what's an emergency cleaning? How is that different than what we were doing? Really, if you're doing a good job using cleaning and disinfecting, you guys know the difference between cleaning. Cleaning is dirt, spilled soda or water. It's picking up trash off the floor. That's cleaning. Disinfecting is we're killing the invisible virus. And you can only kill the invisible virus if you have the right products and you leave the right products on that surface wet for the period of time that you're supposed to do that. And so emergency cleaning means we go to all the places that Darcy's been in the building today, and we got to clean everything. If she was in bathrooms, conference rooms, where she sat in the kitchen, unless you have a regular protocol that says after Darcy, you sit down in this space, you have to clean up after yourself, which includes disinfecting. So if you have every employee disinfecting the common spaces after they've touched the common spaces, then more than likely it's already been disinfected because I followed the rules. And once I test positive, then you're only going to have to go back to my last place that you found me at my workstation. Emergency cleaning can be done in-house, by the way. You don't need to pay a third party. Third parties, by the way, are roughly around, I'm seeing $3,000 as being the standard number for emergency disinfecting. It's not your whole building, although some of you might have small buildings. It could be your whole building, but I'm seeing $3,000 as the standard number for a cleaning after COVID-19 kind of situation. Temperature checking. So I put this up in front of you guys because it talks about how you have to put a plan together to keep the person who's doing the temperature checking safe. So this slide is in here and it will give you an overview. Please note, it also talks about upping the face mask to potentially a respirator. If you decided to move that person to an N95 respirator, please know that there are rules associated with that. You must go read OSHA's respiratory standard and know what you're committing yourself to if you're going to hand an N95 respirator to the person who's checking temperatures. And I put that in here because it's actually listed. The CDC was making the recommendation that N95 respirators would need to be used as the person who's taking the temperature. And OSHA would say if you're putting that person in those risks and those hazards, that you should up your game. And again, just know what that means if you put an N95 respirator on somebody. Okay, more operational controls. What is your communication system? What online systems are you using? What does your emergency contact list look like? Hey, in the HR department, when's the last time you asked me, Darcy, the employee, to update my emergency contact information? Is it still my husband? Is that still his telephone number? Because when you have to start doing contact tracing and you need to start getting a hold of people, are you getting the information from your vendors and visitors? Are you getting an updated business card? Are you making sure that all that information is current and accurate? Because you're going to need that if we have to do contact tracing situations. In the emergency phone call protocols, what happens if we're outside of the building, right? Or we shut down and everyone has to go home because of the pandemic again? Or there's an emergency evacuation. Do we have all the telephone numbers that we possibly need either on our phone or access through some technology we take out of the building with us? Or is it outside the building? But you need to have access to communication and phone calls and as it relates to your emergency action plan. Okay. I'm going to go over disinfecting and sanitation pretty short, as we're going to spend so much time on this tomorrow for you guys. But Under the engineering and administrative considerations, things you're going to add and rules you're going to put in place. First of all, I hope none of you are doing laundry. If you can outsource laundry, outsource laundry. But if you are doing laundry, then you have to have the right cleaning agents at the right temperature of the water. You have to separate dirty from clean. You can't be shaking it out. And the person doing the laundry has to look like they were in the movie E.T. You got to dress them up from head to toe because you don't know what you're exposing them to in that laundry. In the bathrooms, if you guys can be blocking off the center urinal, if you can limit the number of people going in and out of the bathrooms, if you don't have flammable storage cabinets, but you have over 5 gallons of flammable products, that means hand sanitizer and isopropyl alcohol, they need to go into a flammable cabinet. You need to make sure that your chemicals are EPA approved, and you got to read the directions and make sure that your people are using them correctly. You actually have to have a cleaning log. I need to be able to see when you clean this bathroom, when this kitchen was cleaned, how often that's being done. You need to actually track it based on Massachusetts regulations. You also need to make sure that, let me look on my list. Oh, you also have to make sure that you guys are like when I use the word training, you have to train your people in all of these slides I'm showing you. Any decision you make on these slides, you then have to train your employees. You can do it in a safety briefing. You can do it in a Zoom call like this, but you have to give them an opportunity to ask questions and answers. It doesn't have to be a formal PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be 45 minutes to an hour. As you do. So those of you who've kicked off your control plan, that's awesome. There's about 30% of you that have started. The majority of you have not started yet. That's awesome. Take notes. Start to think about your spaces as we're going through this. And then we're going to give you guys some options to help you guys get your control plan done. If you want it done faster, quicker, you want to do it with a partner, we've got some really cost-effective, like grant funding ways that we guys can actually help you guys get your control plans done through the MassMEP. So we'll talk about that more later. Okay. Do you guys have locker rooms? If you do, separate lockers. Are you going to let your employees take showers at your facilities? So I think about salons and spas and fitness centers and even manufacturing and mechanics facilities that have those services or spaces for their employees. Time to look at them. How are they being cleaned? Do we want to let people use them right now? Disinfecting, sanitation, we talked about trash a little bit. So how many trash cans? Are they issued individually? Are we using liners? Are they cleanly marked? Can your patrons, visitors, vendors, and guests access trash? Do you guys have tissues readily available? Tissues. Did I say tissues? Yep. Why did Darcy just tell me I had to get tissues to make sure tissues are available? Because the CDC, which is best practices, actually has it in writing and is recommending that we have tissues available to people. Do we have gloves available? And we have to have those gloves available in 2 sizes. For our staff, for our employees, especially when it's related to disinfecting or using trash. If we're using a third party at any phase of our trash, what are the rules? What's the pre-screening? What have we put in place for them? Did you guys make a rule that if trash gets to 3/4, have you guys actually taught your employees? You got to show them how to put gloves on and how to take them off. Because if you don't show your employees the right way to take them off, putting them on is easy, but if you don't show them the right way to take it off and they get stuff all over their hands, it kind of defeats the purpose. So we as a company have to teach them how to put it on, how to take it off. Same thing with their masks, how to put it on, how to take it off. There's a correct side and a not correct side. There's a top that bends. There's a top that bends and a bottom that doesn't. So they need to understand which way is up and down and how that works. We don't want to push down in trash. You got to think about recycling. What happens when there's a first aid emergency and I just have a bloody nose and now we're taking all this bodily fluid and we're throwing it into trash? You don't want to leave that to the next guy. You want to tie that up and get that out of your building, right? And then here's your list. Here's part of your training list based on what we just talked about today on the training components that you need to either implement or retrain. Signs and symptoms, your return to work and sick policy, hand washing practices, cough and sneeze etiquette, right? How to put things on, your PPE on, gloves on and off, mask on and off. You got to teach them what the signs and symptoms are. Tell them how to self-monitor at home. Ask them to take temperatures if that's what you want them to do at home. But you got to give them guidance and directions. You now have to talk to them about the travel ban and restrictions so they understand what that means. They need to understand what quarantine means. They need to know if they're at high risk and what high risk also means. That's all the new stuff stuff that the state has required us to do. And all the stuff on the right-hand side are all the things that you guys need to be doing as it relates to the laws, state and federal laws, not CDC and governor's orders, but state and federal laws are listed all on the right-hand side. And every business that's on this, regardless of what your industry is right now, you need to know about what chemicals in your building has come. You got to train your employees. You got to have PPE on. You got to teach them how to clean. You got to have signage posted everywhere. You got to have a first aid team. You got to know what to do if there's bodily fluids, blood, urine, feces, sweat, tears. You got to teach people about hand washing and use of hand sanitizers. So that checklist, if you've got them all checked off, you can be like, whoa, you made it. If you got some, well, then let's talk about the rest. And if you haven't done any yet, okay, that's okay too. But again, the whole point of this webinar is for you guys to take a pulse to understand where you are and what you still need to do. We wanted to guide you so that you don't spend a lot of time in an area that you don't have to spend time in, or writing something only to have to rewrite it again. By the way, you do not have to make this 33 pages long. You do not have to make it, you don't have to be a journalist to write this. All the regulators want to see is, did you write something in plain and simple text, language, English, or whatever language that your employees speak, so that they understand it and they know what they're supposed to do and what they can't do. If it's crystal clear as you bullet point, you don't even have to write narratives. As you bullet point this out, then you'll be okay. You need a starting point. All of you small businesses on here who came here in partnership with the Small Business Development Center, you need to continue to get coaching from them. You need to think about partnering up with MassMEP in getting this done, if you need help and resources, okay? Also, in terms of the pieces of parts, you still have time. Doing nothing is a bad decision, and you might feel a little overwhelmed. You've got to start. You've got to do something. This stuff is changing, and it continues to change, but it's a lot easier for you guys to make edits once we get the foundation made. As I mentioned, the governor made some announcements in the last 2 weeks. Everyone that I've written control plans for the last 5 months, I had to send them all updates so they could go into their policy. They knew exactly what paragraph to go make the changes in. They had choices to make. You want to do this or you want to do this. They made them and they updated the policy. It probably took them minutes to complete. I know this feels like it's going to be a lifetime, but if you stick with these PowerPoint slides, you'll be able to create something that meets your needs without any questions asked. So at this stage, how you guys feel? I love that everyone's still in the middle. Why? Because we still have one more day to go. So I love that a couple of you are confused. I mean, really small amounts. And a couple of you are rock solid. So for the rock solid people, yay, I congratulate you. Well done. For everyone in the middle, it's okay. We're okay. You're doing good. Let's get through tomorrow, and then let's kind of see what the next steps might be for all of you guys. But you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for hanging in. Haley, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, so thanks, Darcy. As she said, we have one more series or one more episode of the series tomorrow. We are lined up for the same time on the same link. So if you haven't registered for tomorrow and you want to, you can still go ahead and go in and do that. And as Darcy had said, we do work with we work with small businesses, and we focus on manufacturers in the state of Massachusetts, but those of you that are small businesses that are 100 employees or less, there is the Small Business Direct Access Program. And Darcy is doing her control plan. So it's a very specific, very detailed series, I guess you could say, Darcy, that's what you've just talked about in yesterday and today, and then again for finishing up tomorrow, but more detailed and more specific to each of these companies to set up their control plan that they can work off of, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you
so
got it.
we have those set up. We will be doing them in the month of August into September, and then we will be doing it again in I think it's October and I think possibly November. So in the link we have the the Commonwealth. So all of you that are under 100 employees, go on and get registered with the Small Business Direct Access Program. There is a lot of training in there that is available for all of you. And it is stuff along these lines. And there's other types as well that you can always use. But now is the time to take advantage of it. So the first link I put in is for the Commonwealth. You jump onto that, you get registered, and then you'll be able to take advantage of all the training that they provide that's offered in there through different companies throughout the state of Massachusetts, and we are one of those. Further on down in the link, I put the link in for our Navigating the Pandemic training, which is actually creating your control plan. So getting really specific, really detailed, getting into the nitty-gritty of the control plan itself. We also were able to complete the recording from yesterday's webinar. So if any of you did not get a chance to attend yesterday, the webinar, the link for the webinar is in the chat right now. So for those of you that may not be looking, if you want to open your little chat bubble, down on the bottom panel, the chat bar will open up and you'll be able to see a couple of different links in there. The Commonwealth link that I posted at the beginning, Matt, our IT manager, posted the recording from YouTube from yesterday. And then I posted our link for the specific training that you can do with Darcy, which runs August, at the end of August into the beginning of September. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for your last, but definitely not least, webinar episode. So we'll see everybody tomorrow, same time, and on the same link. So thanks again. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you all tomorrow.